everyone, and welcome to the Football Engineer Podcast. I'm your host, Jose, and today we're going to talk about the preview for the World Cup final. And to do that, here's my friend Juan Carlos Valladares. Juan Carlos?
Hey, Jose, how are you? Ready for this? Excited. The World Cup final, the biggest game of our sport. Should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And just for information, just FYI, Sergio is away doing actual work on a Saturday while we're here, talking.
Oh, Sergio, I don't know, man. What are his priorities? He should be out here talking, and he's doing work and real life stuff. That's not that important.
Being responsible. But but yeah, so this is interesting. Is this the most lopsided final we have seen in a World Cup? At least like from our time watching World Cup finals since 94, 98.
Yeah, probably. Maybe, just if you look at the talent, maybe the 2002 final was a little lopsided. Obviously, it's Germany, so you expect the best from them. But talent-wise, the Brazil team probably was, had better players at pretty much every position. So maybe that final. But yeah, this might be more. So it sounds lopsided.
It does sound lopsided. So to begin with this, I'd like to start with a bit of questions that we got from the audience. So the first question that we have is from Sunmai Agarkar about one of the most expected duels of the final, which is Modric versus Kante.
That's probably the reason we're most watching, right? If you're into if you don't have a team rooting for it, it's going to be that Modric-Kante duel, maybe the two best players in the tournament so far. And it's very interesting how Modric is going to deal with all the breadth and agility that Kante has to reach a ball, to touch it out of people, to, someone tries to juke him and he's able to just get the point of his foot on the ball or physically just handle people. It's going to be interesting to see how Luka deals with it, but it's going to be interesting how Kante is able to deal with Modric's quickness to get rid of the ball when he needs to. I don't think so far in the World Cup, Kante has come up against a midfielder of that quality, particularly a midfielder who can play with his back against the defender so well, to get it out of the pressure. I think Kante might not be the favorite in this one, like most people might think.
Yes, although, of course, one factor that affects this a lot is just the fact that Croatia comes out of 3 extra times. And even during the England match, we could already see that Modric was not going to have the same kind of energy that he had, for example, against Denmark and Russia. So he could be running out of steam, too.
Well, yeah, he could be running out of steam. I'm a bit skeptical about the idea that even if his physical shape, there's got to be a little bit more in the gas for a World Cup final.
Definitely. In the end, your physical state will always depend on your own emotional state and motivation. It's a bit like how the whole of Croatia, despite the fact that they were probably tired, just overran England after the goal, for example.
Yeah, they've been incredible, Croatia, haven't they? It's just the physical toll of playing 3 games in a row, 120 minutes. It's baffling that they've been able to do it. Can you think about it during a season for a club team playing 3 games in a row for 120 minutes? I don't think it's even possible because you have league games in between. It would be very hard for something like that to happen. And, the World Cup brings this grueling possibility, and we're seeing these players like Rakitic and Luka who have played so many games this season. And, oh, no, we have to do 3 more times where you just have to push and dig from the well of will that you don't expect most players to have. And these people have done it. It's going to be tough for Luka, definitely, physically. But I don't think this game will go to extra time. I think it has goals in it during regular time, particularly because Croatia's tired. So their defensive lapses might happen, and because France will have to be a very proponent team against a team who is able to find the back of defenders so well. So Luka, I think, will have his chances to shine against Kante this game.
Very much. We expect great things from Luka. So the next question is from Prabhakaran about the not use of Dembele in France in general, and like what's been up with that. And I think we can start by saying that unfortunately for him, things went better for the French attack once they did that substitution of like Dembele for Giroud.
Yeah, it's not. I don't even blame it on Dembele. It's not his fault. It's just the qualities that Giroud brings are particularly helpful to bring out the best of both Griezmann and Kylian Mbappe. So it's not about Dembele not being good enough. It's about who can exponentiate. I don't even know if that's a word. I'm making them up as I go. Who can make up? Who can make Griezmann and Mbappe better? And Giroud does that simply because he's able to go shoulder to shoulder with center backs. He's able to draw some of the tension in the box and allow some space for Griezmann to just drift out and go and connect to the midfield better. Something that when it was Griezmann, Dembele, and Mbappe, that would not be able to happen. I don't think it's something that's wrong with Dembele. It's just something that Giroud brings that has made the change more. That has made the change for France.
Yeah, I definitely agree. One got the feeling that when they were playing with the trio of like Mbappe, Dembele, and Griezmann, it was as if the attack lacked a focal point, and Giroud gives you that focal point for the attack.
Yeah. Also, I think trying that trio against Australia, a team that wasn't going to be coming at you, wasn't going to leave too many spaces for France simply because they were inferior. So they're going to be wary of leaving those spaces. That wasn't a good idea. I think, if maybe they would have had a game against Brazil to try this, that would have been more useful simply because there would have been more spaces for France to tackle, and they would have had the countering space, and they would have been letting Dembele, Griezmann, and Mbappe run. But, the group they were in required someone to go fight with those center backs, and Giroud does that.
That's a very good point. Like just the fact that perhaps France didn't look as good in the group stage because they were playing against teams that forced them to have the initiative more often, and that's usually when France tends to have a bit more trouble. So now that we're done with the questions, I think it's time to go a bit more in depth into like what each team should do. So let's start by talking about what's Croatia's game plan, how they should play. So in this section, we're going to start talking about what the Croatian game plan is. So, Juanca, how do you think that Croatia should play?
Right. Croatia, well, against England, I thought you mentioned it pretty well over our conversations and the podcast. The idea that the midfielders were pressing so high up, right? And they were leaving these spaces behind. And Brozovic was overwhelmed with some of the spaces that were being left behind for him. He was not able to handle the runs behind the midfield, and people like Lingard and Ali were finding a lot of space. And England was overrunning them. I think France has even better players to overrun them with if they do something like that. I don't think that pressing will be useful. Also, it's a tiring press for the two midfielders to do it. And France and Croatia just has to be intelligent about their pressing, given their physical fitness. I think they're going to be a little bit more conservative in their pressing this game.
That's one of the questions that I was going to ask you, actually. Like, just exactly that. It's like probably they should be a bit more conservative in this game. I mean, the big issue about Croatia's press is that, well, when you're in the context of national teams, it's harder to press as a team because this is a concept that's very ingrained when you're talking about football clubs. When you press, the entire team press, the center backs tend to try to go up and anticipate, for example, and maintain compactness. You don't see that so often with Croatia. So, of course, what happens there is like what happened against England, that Modric and Rakitic go up to press. Nobody else covers them or like tries to maintain compactness. Like Brozovic and the center backs just stay back. And you get like this gap of like 30 meters that, for example, for Pogba and Mbappe, that would be
Yeah,
That's a walk in the park. So
exactly.
that's extremely dangerous, and that's precisely the scenario that Croatia has to avoid if they don't want to be destroyed by them.
Yeah, I think it's just Rakitic and Modric are going to have to hold back. It's hard to, at national teams, as you're saying, find those, everyone be on the right page on what are the triggers for pressing. They work so much on that at their clubs, but it's so different from club to club. What will constitute pressing? What will trigger the center backs to push up with the midfielders? It changes, and I felt like the center backs for Croatia were just much more comfortable sitting back because they weren't sure of being able to handle some of the pace of the young English players, much less from the French ones who are more talented.
Yes. And now the big problem is that, of course, as everything in football tactics, everything comes with a trade-off.
Right.
If Croatia can press as high as they'd like to, that means that they don't get to recover the ball as high up the pitch as they want to, which they want to do so that, for example, Modric and Rakitic can send through balls to the two fast wingers, which is basically the objective, the way Croatia likes to attack.
Yeah, that's the only issue. I do think Perisic and Rebic can handle a bit of a game of having to be able to run longer distances. The bigger issue there is that the attacks will be tougher to recover the second ball at that point, because then, yeah, Rakitic and Modric might be having to send the ball from deeper. That means they're going to have to cover 30 yards to recover any rebound from a bad cross from Rebic or Perisic. So it's going to be, that might require an extra pressure. And so the attacks might not be as constant, and they're going to have to suffer a lot more. Something that Croatia was not great at against Russia, for example, suffering and defending on their back heels. So, it is a trade-off and it is dangerous. And while Lovren can be hit or miss on the day, Vida is not tested at the highest level against players of this quality.
Well, that's actually a good way to go into like the next question I wanted to talk about, because I have to admit that I am a bit scared of that left part of Croatia's defense that is like Strinic and Vida against Mbappe. Like that looks like a dangerous area.
Yeah, it's Mbappe has been doing it against everyone so far in this World Cup for the most part, and I don't think Vida and Strinic particularly pose a special problem for Mbappe. I don't think he will be scared of them. What's going to help them, I think, it's if Rakitic and Modric don't push up, Rakitic is going to be closer to them to help them out on that left side, and Brozovic might even be able to help through. And Mbappe, it's not that he's bad, but he struggles a little more against these close spaces. He's not able to always find the spaces the way he likes to. So that's another payoff of not pressuring so far high for the midfielders, is that they might be able to be more helpful against the talents of Mbappe on the defensive side.
Yes, and now that we're talking about the battle in that side, I'd actually like to focus a bit more on how Croatia should attack on that side, because a lot of the analysis, yes, focuses on like the importance of Modric, but to be honest, the side of Modric, which is like the right side of Croatia, that side that has Modric, Vrsaljko, and Rebic, they are facing the strong side of the French defense, which is Matuidi and Lucas Hernandez. So honestly, the part of the French defense that looks weaker is the part that has Pavard and Mbappe, because then that's exactly what Belgium exploited in the semifinal. They take advantage of the fact that Mbappe stays forward because he just to be ready to counter, and you can actually try to overload Pavard on that side. And because he's probably the weakest defender out of the French backline, mostly because he's not really a right back to begin with. So that looks like a weak spot that could be targeted.
I agreed completely. And Perisic had a great game too against England. I thought he was dangerous every time. Perisic is hit or miss. Any Inter fan will tell you that he can have incredible games where you think this guy's going to Real Madrid next season, and then he has a game where he's like, no, he's going to be sold to, I don't know, whatever bottom feeder team in Serie A. So he could be the key for Croatia in this game, and particularly his combination, the triangle that they sometimes form between Perisic, Rakitic, and Mandzukic up front. That could be a very key position. If they can overload Pavard and force one of the center backs to come help, it's going to open a lot more space also on the other side for Luka and Rebic and maybe even Versalico running up the field to deal some damage into the French backline. That's, I think, their biggest bet, to have that overload on that side on Pavard and try to pull Varane outside and try to get him to have to deal with more space. And then maybe Mandzukic running in behind and Rakitic receiving at the top of the box. That could cause some issues. But getting there, I think, is going to be the harder issue. Is getting the ball upfield where they can create those combinations is going to be the tougher part for Croatia.
Absolutely. And it's actually funny because if we remember the Real Madrid Juventus from this season, Mandzukic was actually doing a bit of a similar role of like trying to look exactly in that area between like the right back and the right center back of Real Madrid. So it's a similar job in this case.
Yeah, with the difference here that Pavard is much he's physically bigger than the Madrid. I don't remember who was the right back at that Real Madrid game, but I remember Mandzukic pretty much almost bringing the whole Juventus back at that game. So he was abusing the right back. I don't know if it was Nacho or Carvajal that game.
It was Carvajal, I think. Carvajal didn't have the best of seasons.
Yeah. So Mandzukic was abusing Carvajal partly because of his height, but Pavard is physically stronger, so that might not be the way, that he's able to beat him over the top. But I do think Pavard is susceptible to the 1-2s that Mandzukic, Rakitic, and Perisic might form in a different, more with the ball on the ground than they will with the ball over the top. He might do a similar job in the sense that he's playing in between the center back and the full back, but not as with receiving the crosses from the right side, but in the close play combinations he can create with Perisic and Rakitic.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to focus on, because to be honest, of course, the right side of Croatia often, at least in this World Cup, has often been the stronger one, the one with Versalico, with Modric and Rebic, but it's going to be hard for them to do damage on France.
Right. Trust in Luka, right? I guess.
Absolutely. That's the best hope, yes.
Sometimes I love it when Luka gets out wide and he ends up on the byline, almost inside the box or at the line of the box, and he's able to try to get a chip into a incoming midfielder or Perisic or Mandzukic. He delivers those crosses so beautifully sometimes.
Yes, but it's going to be tough. To me, Lucas Hernandez might be the left back of the tournament.
Yeah, he has had an incredible tournament. The game against Argentina, he was superb, pushing up field and forcing Argentina to just not be comfortable on that side at any point when Pavón was trying to attack that side, and Hernandez was just a wall. And I might agree with him being the left back of the tournament.
Yes. So finally, I guess we should talk in the case of Croatia. Who do we think the key players are? For me, I'm going to leave my key player as Perisic. I think if he shows up like he did against England, this game could get really interesting.
Oh, no, you took my guy. I guess just to not be a follower, I'll go with Brozovic. I think he could be very key in this game too. I feel if they go with him behind Rakitic and Modric, just slightly playing off them behind covering, if he's able to have the game of his life in the sense of dealing with an Mbappe run, dealing with Griezmann pulling inside, dealing with aiding the second ball that Giroud might try to leave off for one of the other two forwards, if he can have a great game, he gives his team a chance to not lose it. And then there you could just allow the talents of the players that you have to win it. But if Brozovic can have a big game, Croatia has a chance to win it.
Absolutely. And now that we're done with Croatia, it's time to talk about the French game plan. All right, so now we go on to the case of France, which honestly, it's a bit weird because in a way, France is the strongest plan A of the tournament. It's the team that has basically played against everyone the same way.
Yeah, it's they've allowed teams to have some more control than maybe some of us would want, because they have so much talent. We want them to go out and dominate games and just put themselves on the other team's half and keep the ball and not let other teams have many attacks. But they allow it because they know that there's a better chance. They've understood that football is transitioning into this let's attack the space because it's easier than it is to be the team that has the ball. So it's going to be an important thing for us to see whether they can carry it here, because I don't think Croatia will try to win the ball from them anyways, because they also understand that they're inferior in talent. So it's going to be maybe a little bit different than some of the other games, maybe more similar to the Uruguay game. And France, I think, they obviously have more talented. They should win this game simply because they have players at every position that are world-class or about to be world-class. And they're the better team.
Yes. So in this case, you would expect that France is going to be like the more proactive team and Croatia is going to be the more reactive team.
Right. You would expect that. But I wouldn't be surprised if France is just at the beginning, they try to just pull the ball forward, find Mbappe or Griezmann in space or a long ball to Giroud and let Croatia have some of the ball to lull them into a sense of security with the ball, and then try to press them on and try to find the space as Croatia maybe misplaces a pass here or there, because that's where they've been comfortable this World Cup. And so I'm trying to think of the ways Deschamps could put them in that comfort, where he's going to get France to just be where they've been at this World Cup in this game. And what's something that Croatia is going to have to be wary of is being quick with the ball, in the sense of let's be direct so that we don't leave too many places, in the sense if we lose it, at least our players are still behind us, not committing too many players. France is going to have to do a lot more of a breakdown job in this game than I think they've done in the rest of the World Cup.
Yes, all of this, again, hinges on the assumption that Croatia is not going to play like in other games, because honestly, if they do, they could be in trouble.
So let's assume here that Croatia plays like every other game. Pogba is his game against Belgium, he was physically incredible defending, but he was also so good in what we say in Spanish, dando salida, and playing out for his team, finding the spaces where to pass and finding his teammates farther upfield. If Croatia do this, I talked about Brozovic being a key player, but he would have to be very key and very good to stop a full-on running French team if Croatia presses the way they've pressed in the past couple of games. Because
we would be talking about having in the Brozovic zone Mbappe, Griezmann, and Pogba running at you. So
exactly.
It's not going to be a pretty situation for Croatia. And now that you mentioned Pogba, I really liked his turn. I think it's just as in the case of Pogba, Varane, and especially those two. We've seen growth in the middle of this tournament. We've seen both players reach a new level of leadership and maturity within the team.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, obviously put a lot of pressure on Pogba, the price tag, going to Manchester United. It's always going to be a lot of pressure for a player like him. He has been great in this World Cup because he has been willing to put in some of the work. Sometimes we see him reluctant to do at his club team.
True.
But I think he has been excellent. And when we see some of what he's done at this World Cup, you know why the price tag was what it was, because there's so much talent, both physically and technically. He seems to be gifted in every area, and we're excited for him. And I hope that tomorrow he's able to keep on playing that game. And for Varane, similarly, with Varane, we've seen him play at the toughest club games and the biggest club games year after year.
But with Sergio Ramos.
Exactly, with Sergio Ramos. I agree. We've seen him there. Again, as I was going to say, yeah, Sergio Ramos has pulled from him. He has taken out of Varane. But I think Varane, this in the World Cup, he had to be the leader in the back line. No Koscielny this time around. And Umtiti, he's not the leader of a back line. He has never been the leader of a back line. So Varane had to step up, and he has done it beautifully. incredible defense so far. Maybe the Argentina game is the one game where you would think they allowed a lot of goals, but you're facing Messi. You're bound to allow some goals in, particularly a team that was running forward a lot, like France. So it was I think he's got a great tournament, Varane, and I agree completely that growth from them has been impressive. And I mean, they're both so young still. I mean, we could see another 7-8 years of them at the top of the game.
Yes, absolutely. And talking about Varane in defense, like I was looking at a bit of stats on like the French defense, and the entire thing is insane. These people have basically average like a point 0.4, 0.5 expected goals per game.
Yeah.
And their defense of the box is the most insane thing I've seen, because these guys only like 5% of corners against France are actually struck by rivals. So only 5% of like successful crosses, and only 12% of successful crosses into the box from open play. So and it's a bit worrying, because Croatia's main plan of attack is usually crosses into the box.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue for Croatia. I mean, that's what we're saying. I mean, Croatia would have to have a perfect game from most of their players to have a good chance at this, because the way France has been playing, if they just have the defensive showing that they had against Belgium, and Belgium is much more talented and had particularly, in the forward position with Lukaku, they had a player who was very dynamic, and he was not able to pull out from them some mistakes. So I don't see how, unless they drop off from the last couple of games, how Croatia is going to have many opportunities unless they play the games that we've set up from them that we've talked about earlier.
Yes, and again, like perfect performances because I think we already expect that, for example, Rakitic and Modric are going to play well, but it's the other pieces.
Yeah.
Or, well, we already know that, for example, Mandzukic will step up, will work, but it's the other pieces that maybe Perisic, maybe Brozovic, those are key pieces who perhaps haven't performed at a super level throughout the tournament. And if they have a really good day tomorrow, yes, then we could be talking about Croatia having an actual good chance.
Yeah, it's that idea, right? That because Varane and Umtiti have been so solid throughout the World Cup, it's going to require an effort of Rebic and Perisic and Brozovic to live up to the level of the other three of Modric, Rakitic, and Mandzukic. Also because they've never played in games this big. They've never been in Champions League finals. They've played in big league games, but not with the pressure or quality that we will see tomorrow.
Yes, and the final question I have about France's defense, one thing that was very interesting that I was looking at, like that they did against Belgium, is that they wanted to avoid Belgium from attacking on like Assad's side because they knew that he was the more dangerous man. So they basically try to leave Belgium a bit freer on the right side so that Belgium could start sending passes into Chadli, who was a lot less dangerous. So I wonder if France will do something similar against Croatia, and I think it's more difficult because Croatia is relatively well balanced on both sides.
Yeah, they were very intelligent in that game against Belgium. There was a map going around on Twitter of how many of the passes were just going to the right side for Belgium. It's like, oh, Chadli's open, give it to him. Chadli's open, give it to him. And that did not work. And France was comfortable allowing those passes there because, you didn't expect Chadli to manage a game or to be the game player, the game breaking player of a tournament, of a big game. But as you said, with Croatia, it's tougher to do because, Perisic and Rebic are at a relatively good level of soccer, and Chadli has not been at the highest level, so they're better players, and so there's not a weaker side on Croatia. I mean, you could say, I guess, the left side because Tridinic maybe is not as good as Versalico, but that's where Croatia is going to attack from anyway. So France is not. I mean, I don't think France is going to worry too much about how Croatia is going to do in the wings in this game as they were with Belgium. I think they're going to be more focused on how they press in the middle, and that's where their game plan is going to adapt. Is all right. So if Luka and Ivan Rakitic are both press through the middle, Pogba, Tolisso, please find the space behind them a little bit so we can find a pass over the top of them, and then you guys find the counter in space.
Yeah. So in the end, I mean, we all know that this game depends more on France than on Croatia, in the sense that it's more, if France does a good performance, it will be a bit hard for Croatia to do damage to them. So finally, any predictions? So you already predicted that this is not going into extra time. This is finishing in 90 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I think it's going to end in 90 minutes. I think both the tiredness from Croatia might leave open spaces for France to win it. But I also think if Croatia get a goal at some point in the second half and it's 0-0, and I think it's very possible that could happen. I think, while we've been talking about the left side, I think Umtiti has mistakes in him. And I feel like if at some point Croatia is just desperate, they could just send Mandzukic to fight Umtiti. We've seen how bad Umtiti already dealt with against Roma with Dzeko. Mandzukic, while not the exact same player, the physicality from Mandzukic is still there, and he can have moments similar to Dzeko's moment at that Roma game. If they can just maybe throw Mandzukic for a spell of 10, 15 minutes at Umtiti and maybe send some balls up there for try to fall, there's a chance there. And if Croatia maybe get a goal, I just don't see how it goes through extra time. I think there's too many holes in Croatia, and there's some holes to be exploited in France too. I think there's going to be goals, and whoever gets the first goal is going to dictate the game, and it's likely to be France. I have the French winning, while my heart would love to have Luka Modric and, the country of 4.5 million people who has been war-torn just 20 years ago be able to win a World Cup, a team that even in the youth ranks has not had a great success. You can go through the under-21s and under-19 tournaments in UEFA, and Croatia haven't done great in those tournaments. It's not like they have some incredible plan, but they've had a great club in Dinamo Zagreb, developing players and being sold young and going to Europe and experience. I mean,
including the corruption.
Including the corruption. They've developed everything. Oh, Dinamo Zagreb. Anyways, but they've been able to have experience, and this team has grown. I was watching videos of Euro 2008, and Rakitic and Modric were both there. They lost that game against Turkey, with the famous game with Rustu Regber's mistake, but then he comes back in the penalties and Regber saves a couple. They were there 12 years ago, and I mean 10 years ago, and they're here back again with probably their last chance at a national glory. You wish for them to win, because with the French, you see that they have future, and the core of the squad will likely win a tournament at some point. But with Croatia, this is probably their shot.
This is probably their one shot, which is why I am going to go on the romantic side of things and say that this match is going into extra time. And if this match goes into extra time, that's when the Croatian narrative could start setting in of like, we can do it again.
Oh my God! If it goes into extra time and Croatia pulls it off again, it might be the single greatest World Cup run we've all seen. Just simply on them being able to do it for 4 games in a row. It's wow.
It would be insane. So, well, it's been a blast talking about the final with you, Juan Carlos. So thank you very much for your company and for talking about this with so much enthusiasm.
No, thank you for having me. This is always fun.
Yes. So as always, thank you very much for listening. As always, follow on Quora, follow on Twitter, follow the channel, The Football Engineer. And this is kind of going to be the last podcast that we're going to be doing, at least for the World Cup. Afterwards, we're just going to shift over to the regular weekly schedule of talking about, boring European club football.
It's never as fun as the World Cup. But
although the gifts, all the gifts that you have for summer transfers, that's always a nice time of the year to talk about and just be hopeful.
It's a bit like Christmas, right? Right now with transfers and the World Cup, I'm so excited. It's been a great couple of weeks. By the way, the World Cup has been so much fun. it only happens. I guess it's a good reason it happens every 4 years. It makes it so special when it does come around. And this has been a very special month, I think, for most of us.
Absolutely. So, as always, thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Football Engineer podcast, and we'll talk to you later. And see you around, Juan Carlos.
See you.